The human's name was Evan Hale, and he had learned one hard truth in space. No one came to save slaves. The mining world of Carth Veir had a yellow sky that never changed. Dust floated in the air like it was alive, sticking to skin, clothes, and hope. Evan stood in a long line of slaves, his hands locked in energy cuffs, his neck burning from the control collar. Every breath tasted like metal and ash. Once Evan had been an ordinary man from Earth. He worked maintenance on a deep space cargo ship. He liked fixing broken things. He liked simple food. He liked old Earth songs that most people forgot. Then pirates attacked. No heroic battle, no last message home, just pain, chains, and a price tag placed on his life. Now he belonged to a noble house that believed humans were weak, emotional creatures, perfect for labor. The overseer shouted orders in a sharp alien language. A slave fell to the ground from exhaustion. The whip cracked once, then again. No one moved, no one dared. Evan kept his head down. He survived by thinking about Earth. Rain falling on streets, the smell of bread, warm sunlight through a window, small things, useless things, the galaxy said. But those things kept him alive. Move, human, the overseer snapped, striking Evan's shoulder. Evan stumbled but didn't fall. Falling meant punishment, punishment meant death. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time had no meaning here. Then the air changed. The ground vibrated under heavy footsteps, slow, confident, deliberate. The overseers suddenly went quiet. Slaves froze, fear spreading faster than words. A figure entered the camp. She was tall and striking, her armor black as deep space, trimmed with faint silver lines that glowed softly. A veil of dark energy flowed behind her like smoke, moving as if it had its own will. Her eyes were a deep, glowing violet, calm, cold, and painfully aware. This was no ordinary noble. This was a widow. Evan didn't know her name, but he felt it in his bones. Powerful, dangerous, untouchable. All slaves lowered their heads. Evan didn't because he was humming. It was barely a sound, a broken melody from Earth, something his mother used to play when he was a child. He didn't realize he was doing it. It just slipped out, quiet and tired. The widow stopped walking. Her eyes turned toward him. The overseer noticed and rushed forward, furious. "Silence, animal!" he shouted, raising his whip. Before the whip could strike, it dissolved into glowing dust midair. The overseer froze. The widow spoke, her voice calm but sharp enough to cut steel. "What," she asked, "is that sound?" No one answered. Her gaze stayed on Evan. The overseer stammered, "My lady, it is only a human making noise." "I did not ask you," she said softly. Evan swallowed. His throat felt dry and tight. Speaking without permission could kill him, but something in her eyes wasn't cruel, it was curious. "It's a song," Evan said quietly, "from my home, Earth." The word seemed to interest her. "Home," she repeated. The overseer raised his voice again. "Humans have no home now, they are property." The widow turned her head slowly toward him. She lifted one finger. There was no scream, no blood. The overseer simply stopped existing. Silence swallowed the camp. Evan's heart hammered so hard he thought it would break his ribs. The widow walked toward him. Each step felt heavy, final. She stopped inches away, studying his face, his scars, his fear, his tired eyes. "You remember your world," she said, "even after chains." She reached for the control panel on his collar. Evan flinched. The collar deactivated. The cuffs fell to the ground. Gasps spread through the slaves. Evan stared at his free hands, shaking. "You are under my protection now," the widow said. His voice trembled. "Why?" She looked at him for a long moment, then answered quietly. "Because a being who still sings in hell should not be owned." And with that, the fate of a broken human and a lonely alien widow changed forever. Evan could hardly believe he was alive. The collar around his neck had vanished, and the chains that had burned his wrists for years were gone. Yet fear clung to him like a shadow. He glanced at the stranger who had freed him, the alien widow. Her name, he would soon learn, was Valera. She stood tall and graceful, her black armor reflecting the fading yellow light of Karth Vaer's twin suns. Her violet eyes, glowing faintly, seemed to pierce into his very soul. She was terrifying, and yet somehow there was a softness beneath the deadly calm she radiated. "Come," she said, her voice gentle but commanding. "You will leave this place with me." Evan hesitated. His life had been nothing but orders and pain for so long that the thought of freedom was almost impossible to accept. Why me?" he asked quietly, still unsure if he should run or fall to the ground in gratitude. Valera's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Because you remember your world, and your song, it should not die here." "Song," he whispered. He felt foolish, trembling in front of this alien warrior who could have killed him with a blink. "It's just a melody from Earth. It doesn't matter." "It matters," she replied, her voice steady. "It is proof that something human survived, that something alive can exist even under cruelty. That is rare, precious." For the first time in years, Evan felt seen, not as a slave, not as a thing to be sold or broken, but as a person, a human being, and that recognition made him tremble even more than fear ever had. She led him away from the camp gates. For the first time, he saw her ship up close. It was massive, elegant, and alive with quiet energy. Its hull shimmered with dark metal that seemed to drink in the light, but the inside was warmth and order. The air smelled clean. There were no alarms, no screams, no guards shouting. For the first time in years, Evan could breathe without fear of punishment. In his cabin, food waited for him. Fresh fruit, warm bread, water that didn't taste like metal. Evan ate like a starving child. Tears ran down his face. Valera watched silently from the doorway. She did not speak. She did not judge. She simply waited as if understanding that some wounds healed slowly. "You value small things," she said after a while, her voice breaking the silence. "They are not small," Evan replied, wiping his face with his sleeve. "They are Earth." Valera tilted her head. "Earth, a planet far from here." Evan nodded. "It is my home. It's simple, and it has things you would not understand at first: rain, oceans, forests. Simple songs, warm food, music. Things like that make people human." "Human," Valera repeated. The word sounded foreign on her tongue, but her eyes were thoughtful. She did not dismiss it. She seemed to weigh it, turning it over like a rare jewel. For hours, Evan showed her small recordings of Earth, music videos, images of green fields, cities full of light, children laughing. Valera watched with fascination. Occasionally, she would ask questions, her voice curious but careful. "Why keep old songs? Why remember things that are not useful?" Evan smiled softly. "Because they remind us what we fight for. Not money, not power, not survival, but life itself. And they remind us who we are." Valera studied him quietly. He was weak in the body, but something about his soul, it was strong, determined, gentle, defiant without knowing it. He sang softly to remember, and in doing so, he had awakened something long buried in her, a longing for connection, for hope, for the warmth she had lost when her mate died in battle. The more time she spent with him, the more she realized that humans were unlike any other species she had encountered. Fragile, yes, but unyielding in spirit. Even broken, Evan carried something no power in the galaxy could destroy. His memory of Earth, his small acts of rebellion, his song, it made him radiant in a way soldiers, nobles, and warriors could never match. By nightfall, Evan felt something he had not felt in years: trust. Not in a government, not in a law, not in anyone he had ever known, only in her. Valera, the widow, who had the power to destroy worlds but chose to protect one broken human. And in that trust, something fragile began to bloom, a seed of hope, of friendship, and perhaps, if he dared, love. For the first time, Evan realized that freedom was not just the absence of chains. Freedom was being seen, being believed in, and being remembered not just as a human but as himself. The ship hummed softly beneath them. Outside, Karth Vaer's red dust storm roared against the hull. Inside, a human and a widow sat together, and for the first time, silence was not a threat. It was the beginning. The ship moved silently through the stars, its engines glowing faintly in the black void. Evan had never seen space like this. Not the harsh, violent space of raids and pirate attacks, but quiet, calm, almost gentle. He pressed his hands against the railing of his cabin, staring at the stars as they stretched endlessly around him. Every dot of light reminded him of Earth, his home, his past, the life he thought he had lost forever. Valera stood nearby, her violet eyes fixed on the controls of the ship. She moved with elegance and purpose, every step precise, every motion deliberate. She did not speak much, but her presence filled the room. It was strange and unsettling, yet comforting. Evan wanted to ask her so many things, but words felt small and inadequate. "Are humans always like this?" Valera asked suddenly, turning toward him. Her voice was soft, almost curious. "Small creatures who remember so much, even when it brings pain." Evan shook his head slowly. "No, most forget. They forget to sing. They forget to hope. I survived because I didn't forget, because I remembered rain, sunlight, music. Things like that keep us alive inside, even when our bodies are broken." Valera considered his words. She had seen countless beings in her life, warriors, politicians, slaves, but none had survived so much yet remained human. His eyes shone with quiet strength. His voice carried an honesty that no noble, no soldier, and no law could teach. Days passed on the ship. Evan learned to trust its mechanisms, to understand its rhythms, to feel safe for the first time since Carth Veir. Valera allowed him freedom he had not known he could have. He could walk anywhere, eat when he wished, even choose his own music to play through the ship's quiet speakers. She never judged him, never corrected him, only watched, silently learning as he learned from her. Evan discovered the stories behind Valera's armor, her widow's veil, the cold grace of her demeanor. Her mate had been a leader, a warrior who believed in justice and mercy. He had died challenging the same noble house that enslaved humans like Evan. The loss had hardened her. She carried grief as though it were a weapon, sharp, controlled, and unyielding. Yet in Evan she saw something different, not weakness, not rebellion. Something that reminded her of the life she had lost and the small joys she had abandoned. He showed her Earth recordings, music, forests, oceans, street markets, children laughing, rain dripping from leaves. Valera was fascinated. "I do not understand why these things are important," she admitted one evening. "Why do you cling to such small rituals?" Evan smiled. "Because they remind us why life matters, not survival, not power, life itself. Songs, food, laughter, they are proof that we exist, and proof that we fight even when the world is cruel." Valera was quiet for a long time after that. For the first time, her veil seemed lighter, less heavy around her shoulders. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that they were both survivors of worlds that demanded cruelty and obedience. Yet here, in this ship floating among stars, they were free. One night, Evan stepped onto the ship's observation deck. The galaxy stretched above him, infinite and silent. Valera joined him, her presence near but not touching, her violet eyes reflecting distant suns. "You are far from home," she said. "Yes," Evan replied, voice soft. "But not as far as I thought, not while someone sees me, not while someone believes I can be more than a slave." Valera did not answer immediately. She simply stood, watching him. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she lowered her hand, her armor seeming less like a shield and more like a form of protection she allowed herself to share. Evan realized then that they were both alone in their own ways. He, a human who had lost everything but memory and hope. She, a widow who had loved and lost everything except purpose and vengeance. Together, their paths had collided, and in that collision, something fragile and powerful was growing. The ship hummed softly beneath them. Stars moved endlessly around them. For the first time in years, Evan felt the possibility of tomorrow, not just survival, not just freedom, hope. And Valera, the alien widow, felt it too, a whisper of life that had been missing since her mate's death. The journey had begun not just through space, but toward something neither of them had expected. The chance to heal, to remember, and to discover that even across galaxies, small things, songs, memories, kindness, could change everything. Evan had begun to feel safe, almost like he could breathe freely again. But peace is fragile in the galaxy. Valera's enemies were not patient. The noble house that had enslaved humans for profit would not forgive her defiance. Word had already reached their fleets. Warships bristling with weapons and dark intent, were moving toward them. Valera stood on the bridge, her hands resting lightly on the control console. Her violet eyes scanned the distant blips of approaching ships. "They think they can take what I saved," she said softly, but there was no fear in her voice, only cold certainty. Evan approached, his steps hesitant. "They will destroy you," he said, voice tight. "Or the ship, or both. We can't fight them all." Valera turned to him, and he saw something he had never seen before. A flicker of something almost human beneath her armor. Resolve, yes, but also care. "They have numbers," she said. "We have truth. They enslave, we free. The galaxy will remember the difference." Evan swallowed hard. He had spent years running, hiding, surviving. Fighting was not new, but this was something bigger than him. "I don't want to die," he whispered. "You won't," Valera said. Her words were not a promise, only a certainty. "Because I do not lose what I protect." The first ship appeared on sensors, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the hum of the engines deepened. Valera moved with practiced grace, issuing commands to the ship systems. Shields rose, energy thrummed through the hull, and the first volleys of enemy fire were absorbed with barely a tremor. Evan clutched the railing, heart-hammering. Explosions shook the ship, sending him stumbling. But Valera's presence was steady beside him, like a rock in the middle of a storm. He realized then that fear could exist alongside courage. It was strange, almost overwhelming, but he felt alive for the first time in years. The battle intensified. Enemy ships tried to flank them. Valera fought like a force of nature, her ship twisting and turning in impossible maneuvers, dodging blasts that would have shredded normal vessels. Evan watched, breathless. The Widow's wrath was precise, deadly, and beautiful in its terrifying elegance. But then boarding pods dropped. Aliens he could barely recognize began boarding the ship, weapons raised. Valera moved toward the entry point, her hands glowing faintly as her veil of dark energy expanded, pushing enemies back with a force that felt alive. Evan grabbed a wrench from a nearby console. He was no soldier, but he would not run. He followed her, hands shaking, heart pounding, ready to do what he could. "You don't have to fight," Valera said quietly, her eyes meeting his. "I do," Evan replied, surprising even himself. I have to, not for you, not for me, but for everyone they enslaved, for the people who can't fight back." They moved through the corridors together. Evan swung his wrench at a stunned alien, then ducked under a blast, adrenaline flooding him. Valera was a whirlwind beside him, precise, controlled, but not cruel. Every strike, every motion protected him. And yet she allowed him to fight, to be human. The boarding party was repelled, but the ship was damaged. Smoke filled the corridors, sparks flew. Systems were failing. Evan's chest heaved. He looked at Valera, fear and awe mixed together. "We can't hold them forever," he said. Valera shook her head. "We do not need forever, we need one choice, one truth. Witnesses, the galaxy must see what they do, and when it does, they will fall." Evan blinked, understanding slowly. She was not just fighting for them. She was fighting for every human they had enslaved, every memory they had tried to erase. Her war was larger than revenge. It was justice. The first transmission was sent. Recordings of slave camps, collars, abuse, and chains, broadcast across the network to every corner of the galaxy. Valera looked at Evan, her voice softening for the first time in hours. "No matter what happens next, you are free. You deserve that, at least." Evan's hands trembled. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "Survive, remember, live, that is enough." The galaxy was watching now, and in that moment Evan realized that he was no longer just a human under chains. He was a witness, a survivor, a spark of hope, and Valera, the striking alien widow, was the fire that would carry it forward. The battle raged outside, but inside something new had begun. Courage, trust, and the knowledge that even in darkness, humans could shine. Evan had never imagined he would see it. Human ships. Thousands of kilometers away, streaks of silver light cut through the darkness, moving with precision and purpose. At first he thought it was a hallucination, a dream after years of chains and fear. But Valera's calm, steady voice confirmed the truth. "They are coming," she said simply. Her violet eyes glimmered with something Evan could not name. Relief, hope, maybe pride. Evan's heart pounded. Humans, his own kind. The ones who remembered what it meant to be free, what it meant to fight for justice, what it meant to save one another. For the first time in nearly a decade, Evan allowed himself to believe he might survive this war. The noble house's fleet noticed them immediately. Panic spread through their ranks as the human ships moved in formation. They did not fire first. Humans did not attack for revenge, they attacked for liberation. Every volley, every strike was calculated to disable the oppressors, not destroy innocents. Valera guided her ship through the chaos, working in harmony with the humans. Her alien maneuvers combined with human strategy created something unprecedented. Evan watched from the observation deck as enemy ships fell one by one, their firepower rendered useless against the coordinated advance. And then the boarding party, the very ones who had broken chains, torn flesh, and crushed spirits, were overwhelmed. Human soldiers moved with precision, freeing captured slaves, deactivating collars, and offering water, food, and words of comfort. Evan's chest tightened at the sight. He had imagined freedom countless times, but never like this, a flood of compassion sweeping across the stars. Valera's ship landed on a nearby human vessel. The doors opened. Marines entered, weapons ready, but their eyes were kind, curious, not judgmental. Evan stepped forward, unsure if he should bow, shake hands, or speak. "She saved me," he said, voice strong despite exhaustion. "She saved thousands." The Marines looked at each other and then at Valera. "Then she's family," one said simply. No questions, no suspicion, only acceptance. Valera looked at Evan, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "Family?" she asked. "Yes," Evan said, smiling through tears. "On Earth, we fight together, we protect each other. That makes family." She studied him, and something unspoken passed between them. For the first time, she did not feel like a weapon. She felt like someone who belonged, someone seen, someone needed. Evan walked through the ship, watching humans and freed slaves embrace. Children laughed, some for the first time in years. People cried, some out of relief, some out of disbelief. And above all, he felt a warmth he had almost forgotten, the warmth of being home. Valera followed him silently, observing, learning, adapting. She touched the human technology, curious about its simplicity and efficiency. She watched the laughter, the tears, the compassion. And slowly she understood something profound. There were things stronger than power, faster than weapons, and deeper than fear. Evan took her hand and led her outside onto the ship's observation deck. Below, the freed slaves were boarding human ships, heading toward safe worlds. Above, stars stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the triumph of hope. "They see you," Evan said softly. "They know what you've done, you don't have to fight anymore." Valera shook her head, a faint smile on her lips. "I will fight," she admitted, "but not for myself, for them, for you." Evan looked into her violet eyes and realized the truth. The widow had found something she thought impossible, a reason to hope again. And he, a broken human, had given it back to her without even knowing. For the first time since Carth Veir, Evan allowed himself to feel joy. Not fleeting, not fragile, but real. The galaxy had witnessed cruelty. The galaxy had witnessed chains. And now the galaxy had witnessed freedom. And in that moment, Evan understood something that no slavery, no pain, and no fear could ever erase. Humanity never gave up on its own. It never stopped fighting for justice. It never forgot how to hope. And he, saved by a striking alien widow who now walked beside him, would never forget it either. The first sight of Earth made Evan's chest ache. Blue oceans stretched endlessly, green forests swayed beneath clouds, and the air shimmered with life. He had imagined this moment for years, dreamed of it in quiet whispers while chained on Carth Veir. But seeing it now, alive and real, made his heart almost too heavy to bear. Valera stood beside him on the observation deck, silent, her violet eyes wide. The colors were unfamiliar to her species. The scent of Earth, carried faintly on the recycled air of the transport, seemed almost magical. She reached out a hand as if to touch it, though nothing could reach the planet from here. "You live here?" she asked softly. "Yes," Evan said, his voice trembled. "I was born here, it's home, and now it's yours too if you choose it." Valera studied him for a long moment. She had known war, loss, and cruelty. She had known power, fear, and revenge. But she had never known this, beauty that did not hide danger, a planet that gave life instead of taking it. She felt something in her chest that she had thought long dead, hope. The human ships escorted her vessel through the atmosphere, guiding it to a landing zone surrounded by green hills. Children ran across fields toward the arriving Marines, laughing, shouting, and waving. Slaves who had been freed clutched each other, crying, some collapsing to the ground in relief. Evan felt tears burn his eyes. Valera followed him down the ramp. Her tall figure cast a long shadow on the grass, but there was no fear in those around her. Instead, people stared, curious but respectful. Some whispered, others pointed, but all seemed to understand. The widow who had saved a human now walked among humans, and they did not recoil. They saw only someone who had broken chains. "You are safe now," Evan said, squeezing her hand gently. Valera's eyes flicked to his. "Safe, I am not used to this word," she admitted. "I do not feel it often, but with you it feels different." Evan smiled softly. "You've done so much already, and you're still here. That counts for everything." They walked through the city together. Valera was fascinated by simple things, flowers growing in gardens, fountains spilling water into stone basins, the hum of vehicles and people. Each sound, each sight, each smell seemed to spark something within her, a memory she could not name but wanted to keep. Evan showed her music from Earth, simple songs played on instruments she had never seen. He showed her rain falling onto rooftops, the way water collected in puddles, reflecting the sky. Valera laughed quietly when a child splashed in a puddle, and Evan realized he had never heard her laugh before. It was soft, melodic, and real. At night, they sat on a hill overlooking a forest. The stars were distant but still visible above Earth's blue haze. Evan handed her a cup of warm coffee. She sniffed it cautiously, then took a small sip. The taste made her blink. "Strange, bitter, yet comforting," she said, smiling faintly. "You like it?" Evan asked. "It is Earth," she replied. Her eyes reflected both the stars above and the lights below. "I am beginning to understand. This world, it teaches patience, kindness, memory. You are all very strange creatures." "And proud of it," Evan said, laughing softly, "even when the universe tries to break us." Valera looked at him, and for the first time she allowed herself to lower the weight of grief she had carried for so long. She no longer wore the widow's veil of sorrow as tightly. Instead, she allowed curiosity, wonder, and maybe even a fragile form of love to fill the space it had occupied. Evan realized that she had changed him too. Not in the way he had expected. He had survived years of slavery alone, but in the way she reminded him that hope was not lost. That even after pain, even after chains, even after the galaxy tried to crush humanity, life could still be beautiful. Valera reached for his hand again, a gesture small but full of meaning. "I think I could belong here," she said. "You do," Evan replied. "You already saved more than me. You saved us all." And on that quiet hill beneath the stars, a human and an alien widow began a new chapter. One not defined by chains, by war, or by loss, but by freedom, trust, and the promise that even the smallest acts of hope could change the universe. The galaxy had seen cruelty, chains, and darkness, but now it would see something else. Evan stood on the hill with Valera, looking at the stars above Earth. His heart was full, though his body still carried the scars of years in slavery. He had survived because he remembered. He had survived because one being, striking, fearless, and grieving, had seen him not as property but as human. Valera watched him quietly, her violet eyes reflecting distant suns and Earth's green fields. She had learned laughter, music, rain, and coffee. She had walked among humans who had once seemed weak to her, and she had realized something powerful. Strength is not just weapons or armor. Strength is memory, hope, and the courage to protect life even when it is small, fragile, or broken. "You saved me," Evan said softly, breaking the silence. "No," Valera replied, shaking her head. "You reminded me what I lost, and in doing so you reminded the galaxy who we are." Evan's eyes met hers. There was no fear, no doubt, only trust and recognition. Humans had a way of surviving, a way of enduring that no alien power could break. And he, fragile, broken, yet unbowed, was proof. The freed slaves had rebuilt. The noble house that had enslaved countless beings had fallen. Their fleets destroyed, their influence gone. But it was not only victory in war, it was victory in spirit. Humanity had arrived not with hatred but with compassion. They freed the oppressed, protected the weak, and remembered who they were. And somewhere in that triumph, Evan and Valera found themselves not as soldier and warrior, human and alien, but as equals, survivors, companions. Valera bent down and touched the grass for the first time, feeling the soft blades beneath her fingers. "It feels alive," she whispered. "Not like Karth Veer, not like war, alive." Evan smiled. "It is alive, that's why we fight, that's why we remember, and that's why we never let chains define us." The wind carried the faint scent of flowers, of rain, and of earth itself. It was more than survival, it was proof of life, of beauty, of freedom. Evan realized that his journey was no longer about escape or revenge. It was about legacy, about showing that even one human, remembered and protected, could change everything. Valera looked at him, the weight of grief lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since her mate had died, she felt something entirely new, hope, wonder, and even a fragile kind of love. She reached for his hand. "Then I will stay," she said simply. "Not as a warrior, not as a widow, but as someone who belongs here with you." Evan squeezed her hand, feeling warmth spread through him. "You do belong," he said, "with all of us and with me." They stood together in silence, the stars above them witnesses, the earth below them alive, and the galaxy forever changed by one small truth. Humans, no matter how broken, never give up. They remember. They hope. They fight, not for glory, not for conquest, but for life, freedom, and the smallest acts of kindness that make the universe worth living in. Valera leaned her head slightly on Evan's shoulder. He hummed a faint earth tune, a song he had carried through slavery, through fear, through endless nights. And she listened, letting it fill her heart. It was a song of freedom. It was a song of hope. It was a song of humanity. And in that moment, across the galaxy, it became clear. Humans are not just survivors. They are lights in the darkness, sparks of courage that even the vast universe cannot extinguish. And Evan, saved by a striking alien widow, and Valera, learning to live again, stood together beneath the stars. Two survivors, two souls, and one truth: the universe had learned once and for all, never underestimate humanity.